are talking Haunting of the Mary Celeste, although a more apt name should be Haunting of the Mary Celeste's last known position, because that's actually more of what the story is actually about. Because guess what? This movie does not feature the Mary Celeste. And this one is directed by Shana Bett and stars Emily Swallow as Rachel and Richard Roundtree as the captain of the vessel that is involved in this movie. So, in case you are unaware, the Mary Celeste is a real vessel that its crew disappeared with mysterious circumstances, I believe in the 1800s, and it was found abandoned with food on the table, and no one really knows what happened to the crew. There's various theories, from the supernatural to the more mundane, but no one kind of really knows. A great backdrop for a movie. So here we have a lower budget kind of horror thriller movie. It's not really a horror, I will say. I'll kind of banner it under the kind of the horror umbrella because it's kind of paranormal. But I would say it reminded me a lot of a Picnic at Hanging Rock in a way, where that's kind of a weird sort of paranormal movie about kind of disappearances. It kind of reminds me of this in a lot of ways. So the story focuses on this small group of scientists that they charter a small boat to take them out to the last position where their Mary Celeste, obviously, a long time ago, was said to be, to try and find out what happened, try and take readings. Our lead scientist, Rachel, has a theory. She also has a personal reason why she wants to go out there. And as the crew get out there, obviously weird things start to happen. There may well be paranormal events taking place. What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie to find out. So let's discuss first of all what worked in the movie. I've got to say, I think the acting from our two main characters, Emily Swallow, who plays Rachel, lead scientist, was good. She did a good job acting in the character. I believed what she was saying. And Richard Roundtree was, I've got to be honest with you, whenever he was on screen, he stole the show for me, because I thought his character was absolutely charming and has a real kind of presence, even in a kind of a lower budget B movie. And he's much more of your everyman, I feel, much more of a likeable character, as we'll come on to. The other thing I would say is the idea to have a movie based around, a real life mystery like the Mary Celeste, where the staff with the crew mysteriously vanished, and have a kind of a movie based on the real life events where it's kind of unexplained. It's great. It's an inbuilt kind of spookiness to it, an eeriness of this movie, because you kind of know something did happen and you don't really know what. I mean, there's theories out there, but this one presents its own theory. But let's talk about what doesn't work. I have to be honest with you, this movie was incredibly dull. It's obviously a low-budget film, but 95% of this film takes place in a cabin in a small boat. It is not visually interesting at all. It's a very dialogue-driven film, and we'll come on to another problem with that in a second, but it's just, there's nothing really visually interesting. We see a few glimpses, but it's all kind of either very quick, literally a second shot here and there, or kind of somewhat obscured in regards to any of the kind of the paranormal stuff. There's no real visual stimulus on screen, and the story is extremely slow, and I have to be honest with you, as I say, pretty dull. As I say, it's because it's such a dialogue-driven movie, that can be good, and that can work. But ultimately, film is a visual medium at the end of the day, and you have to be incredibly strong actors and writers to be able to pull off a very much dialogue-driven movie, such as Reservoir Dogs, for example. But this one, I've got to say, the character of Rachel, although well acted, is particularly unlikable. She comes across as unreasonable and selfish. And therefore, you simply don't root for her as a character. I'll also add to that, despite I feel the strong acting from our central characters, our central two characters, the other three members of the crew, not such a good actors, unfortunately, and come across as B-movie actors, ultimately. So, we don't have particularly great acting from some and unlikable characters from another. The story seems very dragged out. It takes its time to really get to the point. And it's still, you feel unfulfilled with what kind of, I think, what the movie is trying to say in its explanation. I don't think it does a good enough job of having an interesting story, despite the fact there's very, very little visuals here. You know, the mystery just isn't that interesting, and you feel that scenes are kind of getting stretched out. Oh, kind of, look, something's happening. We'll stare at it for a while and kind of like not film it and things like this. And then go, oh my God, we should be filming it. And very obvious things that kind of, that you feel like the runtime, although it's relatively meagre, but there's so little story, it kind of, you feel like they're really padding out what they do have. Yeah, I mean, I think the climax, although I would say somewhat eerie, is somewhat unsatisfying as well. And it tries to have an emotional punch, and I gotta say, I think it failed in that response. There's also a end credit scene, well, not end credit, end of the movie, the epilogue, I suppose, seems pointless, I have to be honest. There you go. So the movie it's not a badly made film. It's well shot, but it's visually very uninteresting. Great, all we see for 95% of the film is a dark cabin, brilliant. Not particularly interesting. Dialogue which I don't think was particularly interesting, you know, read out by either, you know, average actors, let's give them, you know, they're not bad necessarily, but just, you know, so-so actors, and one of our main character really being pretty unlikable, selfish, and kind of like, just unlikable generally, I have to say, although not badly acted, I will say that. So the film, to me, really kind of fails, I feel. It's not a horror film, there's no scary bits in it. It's, you know, it just is a sort of paranormal, I don't even want to say thriller, because it really isn't thrilling in any way. A paranormal drama that's very humdrum, very slow, with not particularly kind of like interesting characters, apart from Richard Roundtree's character, who was by far and away the best thing in the film. As I say, technically not a bad film, I'll say that, but uninteresting, dull. 4 out of 10 for me. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.